All right, how
Good, man. How are you?
perfect. Good. How you doing, man?
Good.
Exactly. Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. And first and foremost, I want to tell you, out of all of these, I'm going to be a little biased. I'm really excited to like hear your story because I come from the beer world my whole career, and I'm really excited to see what you guys are producing. So and hear about how you guys came up with it.
Yeah, it is, man. It's been a wild 5 years in this
Yeah.
space. So this is cool, man. Yeah, I've been, we've been following each other for a while now, and just seeing the clips and stuff. And I like the subject matter because well, this process is so insular so often, and you feel like you're all alone, but really we're all dealing with the same shit.
Exactly. And like I want to tell you before we jump in is like I really appreciate present your content because that's the most important thing right now in this industry specifically is showing the human aspect of everything that we're doing. And I think the industry, one of the things that went away was in the past 5 years, I got into it in 2018, 2019 when the Farm Bill passed as well. And it's like it went faceless. And here's where craft beer did the right thing was craft beer didn't go faceless when they came in. They went story based and hand selling and all that. And it's like when I saw that, I just immediately I've been working for 3 years on this. So we have about 200 some episodes in our YouTube channel, but it's just a different branding called Ready to Drink. It was called Free Mind Local and then Free Mind Network before that.
Man, that's a ton of content. That is a
Yeah,
ton.
yeah. Our YouTube is we have like 600 or 700 videos on our YouTube channel. So yeah, it's we've been doing this for a long time in the beer industry, and that's where I'm really excited to see the opportunity of what we do and people like you that are able to tell their story and tell it in an authentic and genuine way because that's how we've helped so many craft breweries. I've worked with over 200 breweries around the country, and like that's what we did, and that's what we do still is getting people's story out there and been doing it for 20 years. So but anyway, man, yeah, it's I want to jump into your story, you and Jared, and I'll just kick everything off real quick, and we'll kind of go on from here. I want to remind everybody as we get started here, we have Gordon here from Float House, and I want to remind everybody that there are no script, no agenda. Gordon and I have followed each other online, and that is the only context that we have. I have not Googled Gordon's name at all. I do go on the website, so I have been on Float House's website, and I'm going to biasly say everybody here knows and talks about me, even though I am sober, coming up on 3 years this week. But I love the beer industry, and I've been in it for 21 years. And now I'm super excited to. I still have not tried the product, so I'm going to hit a hunt, nudge, wink, wink. Got to get some samples down here.
I got you.
But definitely, so we have a non-alcoholic beer that we're talking about with Float House. So Gordon, thank you so much for taking the time, and I can't wait to hear you and Jared's story, how you guys met, where this idea came from, and also what it's like being very unique in the already unique industry where you're not a seltzer, you're not a cocktail, you're not a mocktail, you are a beer. So talk like how's it going? How's everything going and everything in the world today?
Yeah, well, where to start? Firstly, thank you. This is appreciated, and very fun to have an opportunity to talk about this stuff. To make and technically it's not a beer. This is
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
we went to great lengths to make sure it was not considered a beer, but we have a product that looks like a beer, tastes like a beer, but does not meet the definition of a malt beverage. This has been a difficult thing, and I think part of it is the way we've chosen to go about it of building out a manufacturing facility and dealing with the overhead and involvement. But long term, we see that as going to be a key part to our success as we're able to control our process and margins and make the brews ourselves. But it has been a long journey, and it did not start from with the non-alc brews idea. I also come from craft beer. My entire professional career was with the goal of doing every single job inside of a brewery so I could open up my own down the line. And I, like you, now like a little over 3 years with no booze. And
Nice. Congrats, man.
thanks, man. It has, been part of me growing up and, you know, becoming a dad, and now we've got 3 boys. The alcohol was just not fitting in my life anymore. Non-alc beer was it was a savior. I always laugh about it because when Athletic launched in 2017, they poached a bunch of my team from Stony Creek, and I was like,
I was going to say, you're up in Connecticut. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I was like, oh, come on, because I tried the product then, and you know, it was not great. But you know, hats off to them for everything they've done. That is my inspiration. If you can raise $3 million without a product, hats off. You know, and then to do what you did afterwards, it's very impressive. So, you know, I guess we'll just start all the way back when I graduated.
I'll probe you back. Yeah, so go back to when did you and Jared meet? Where did you guys meet?
So in Connecticut, we met when he was working for Two Roads, and I was working for Stony Creek. You know, he was on marketing and sales for Two Roads, and we just kind of crossed paths, I think, like a ton of times at CBCs and, you know, kind of all around. Connecticut's a tiny state, so you get to know most of the beer community pretty quickly. And we were always very close with Two Roads, especially on the production side. You know, it is, I almost went to work for Two Roads when we had moved back to Connecticut. We were living in LA for a while. I worked for El Segundo and did my brewing science out there before my wife got into Yale's midwifery program. And so we moved back to Connecticut.
Oh, very cool.
And it was either going to be third shift at Two Roads or joining on at Stony Creek, which had just launched. And I chose that one.
Nice. I used to do I was trying to recruit Two Roads for a while into my portfolio when I was in the wholesale side in Pennsylvania. So I went up there quite a bit. I'm wondering now when you said that if I've met Jared before, because they introduced me to a bunch of people on one of the tours I did and stuff like that. And then when they came down to launch Philadelphia, I hung out with a bunch of them during Philly Beer Week and stuff like that too. So I actually, but between you and I, and we understand this, that was back in my heavy drinking days. So I have to see, he'd probably remember more than I would, I'd say. But all joking aside, but no. So wait, what year is this that you guys are kind of crossing paths and zigzagging on the street and in the industry and stuff?
2014, 2015. And then like last time I had remembered seeing him was like right after they opened Area 2, and they had a CT Brewers Guild event there, and you know, we all went and Googled the 50-barrel cool ship and all the crazy stuff that they had done. And then, you know, didn't really talk to him for a couple of years. You know, I had been at Stony Creek, and that company was going through a lot of changes. Everything kind of had fallen on me, and it was a lot. I got an offer from 12% to hop on and help run that insane enterprise, and I jumped at it as an opportunity to explore potentially launching a brand out of there. But you know, it was abundantly clear to me kind of at that time that you know, opening a brewery just didn't really make as much sense as it once did. And I think it was a 2019 CBC, I was out in Denver and tried Keith Via's infused IPA, which at 10 milligrams was a hefty dose for me at the time. But, you know, I had that and had the most fun I had ever had at any CBC. Just drank less, laughed more, enjoyed the food in Denver, and you know, that kind of set me off down this exploratory path into this other category.
It's funny. I'm going to give a real connection here. We're both 3 years in sobriety. That's my favorite time. Is always, I used to go to Denver every 6 months, and because we had Miller Coors in our portfolio, and we were there for draft training, then I do Belgium in the portfolio, and etc. Every time I went there, people were like, "Well, how was your time?" I was like, "I had the best beer in the world." They're like, "Oh, do you remember everything?" I was like, "Yeah." And I remember why. It's because I would consume a beverage, a THC beverage or a gummy, and then it wouldn't make me want to have 17 beers over the course of like a craft brewers conference. And every time I would go to Colorado, I'd have a better experience, and I'd talk to more people, have more in-depth conversations. And I appreciate you bringing it up because that's really what let me see how this industry is closer than people want to admit, that it is closer to the alcohol industry than people want to admit.
Yeah, it is. And I think like coming from that beer side of things and being able to talk about it within this context is really important. It is something you see just across the board after being in the craft beer industry long enough. It takes a toll mentally, physically. The alcohol, comes to a head for just about everybody at some point. And it doesn't get talked too much about in the breweries, So I think like for me, these beverages fit into my life in a way alcohol never could. It is a addition rather than a subtraction. And, especially when you got 3 young boys that you got to try to keep up with, this is something I can have at the end of the day and then just spend, whatever time we got building forts and playing with magnet tiles and Legos. And it is the best. I am loving this period of life.
I'm going to say something with a disclaimer, and this is for both of us being industry people, is my experience with THC beverages has been a presence in life, and my experience in alcohol was an escape of life.
Yeah, I think that sums it up so cleanly, because it is, that's what it did. I also, I've got a spicy brain, very, very ADHD. And for, 20 plus years, I was medicating myself with alcohol as a way to just kind of turn everything off at the end of the day. And, going out of that and having a dopamine deprived brain, I had to do some pretty severe changes to my daily routine, to the point of like actually exercising and taking care of myself.
I've lost 100 pounds in the last 3 years. Joking either.
It's wild, man. You're like, oh my God, like I didn't think it was so big, but I was.
When I look at photos from just 5 years ago, I'm like, oh, is that dude? Like,
that guy? Oh my God, I can see that.
It's one of those. It's funny. It's just, but it's you can't talk to people, and this is gonna sound like a therapy session for about 5 minutes for everybody else, but I need people to understand that when we speak on this show about being in the industry, we're not talking about happy hour and 1 or 2 drinks from 4 to 6, or we're not talking about going out to brunch with your friends on a Saturday and Sunday and being like, oh, I had 4 drinking occasions this week. Holy shit. No, we're talking about Monday morning, 9 a.m., you were at a distributor and you're working at a distributor and you have 4 breweries that are coming in. Guess what? 4 breweries all have 3 different brands that they're trying to present to you. And those are 3 3-ounce cups. And before 10 a.m., you might have 32 to 40 some ounces of alcohol in your system before you even ate breakfast in the morning. And then you go to lunch with that supplier, and then that supplier's riding out with you, and that supplier wants to buy you a beer, and then you go to and then you're at, see, we haven't even gotten to happy hour yet that you all think about after you're done work. We're about 20 beers in on a good day, you know what I mean, or whatever, samples and all this other stuff, and a light stomach because we're running and we have to hit all of our calls. And I think that's the thing. And then here, happy hour then turns into a meet the brewer night. So from 4 to 6, I'm at a happy hour, and then 6 to 8, I just did a beer school dinner. And then from 8 to 10, I'm doing a meet the brewer. And now I'm 42 beers deep, and I'm in a rural area, and I don't have a car to get, that's where people don't realize that is a more often than not scenario when working in that industry. And it is, I do want to say this very bluntly, and you alluded to it, the fact that the industry does not want to have this conversation ever, and wants to blatantly put up drink responsibly to the consumer, but not look at itself in the mirror, is something I've been outspoken about since I actually got sober. Because honestly, my life almost ended multiple times, and that's my fault. But in hindsight, as a business owner, looking back, there were so many flags that somebody could have jumped in and at least had one conversation.
Right.
And no one ever within my world had a conversation with me.
Yeah. And it's, man, that is, starting your own company gives you the ability to take all those lessons from prior environments, how to handle situations, how not to handle them. And that is one thing I'm, very proud of. We got a small team here. I got, 6 full-time guys, 7 including me. And, that is what this company, that's the make or break. We're not if we're not taking care of ourselves and our families and, focusing on the importance of what life is beyond these walls, then we're doing a disservice to Float House and what it stands for.
Oh, you're exactly right. It's a big part of my life, and I do a lot of work with other industry people, and I'm actually, ironically, like, I get a lot of phone calls in Pennsylvania from other people I worked with that are just like, "Hey, I'm seeing your content. How do I change this?"
Yeah.
And I'm getting people that are reaching out to me because they don't have resources at their own place of employment. And that's my number one thing is it's not everybody's responsible for putting everything in their lips. I'm accountable for every mistake I ever made. But as an employer that is advocating and incentivizing and blah, 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 you need to have some parameters in to help people get through. And even if it's a conversation, a opportunity for therapy or anything like that, it's just as much of a health insurance problem and it's just as much of a risk as anything else. And if you don't want them consuming it, then then make it a part of the policy. But don't don't celebrate that part of it while allowing somebody to tear their life down, because you made a great point. Your ADHD. When I got into sobriety and therapy, all this stuff, I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD. So Asperger's level 1 when you and I were growing up, and ADHD. So they call it ADHD now. And that was it. That was the addiction. The addiction was filled in that dopamine and all that stuff. And it's like when you get there and you realize that there's nothing, while I'm responsible on the back end of it, I'm also not responsible in the heat of it, because it's impossible to see it when you're in it, when you're in that other mental state too.
Yeah, it is like, I need this to get through this period of time. Like this is the only step. The executive function that's all it's focused on. It's like, we just got to get from whatever we're awake and our mind is not stopping to shutting down at the end of the day.
I love it. So when you guys, when you talk about it's not a beer. Give me the now for you guys with this unique category. What is the terminology that you guys can use moving forward for this part?
So we call it a can-na-brew. It is so to do this, and let me step back for a second. When I left 12%, I with the blessing of my wife, she gave me a year to try to figure out how to start a business.
Oh.
And
let me just pause. We need a moment of appreciation for that wife.
I am constantly just in awe of her support on it, because I definitely spread out beyond a year.
Yeah. So the fact is, she believed in you.
She did,
and that's how this magic happened.
She was the first one to do so, and has been at my side throughout the rest. And that is, over these last 5 years, we've had 3 kids. It's like the fact that she's stayed with that, and
she tripled down on the decision.
Yeah. So I started kind of exploring, at that time, my path to market seemed to be, okay, I'll try to figure out how the Massachusetts rec market is working and find a space and try to launch. Originally, the idea for the company was born out of frustration from these heavily fruited, beers we were making at 12%. We would get, recipes that would use like floor malted Pilsner. We'd have.
Oh yeah, you guys were going heavy on those things. Yeah.
Yeah, 12% deserves its fair share of the blame for the shark jumping that occurred. We were doing crazy stuff with like surf and turf stuff for Evil Twin, lobsters and beef jerky, mixed 4-packs, just insane. But we would, spend the time to kettle sour, then we cellar it and flash pasteurize it, only to bury it under 49% by volume of puree. And it's like, of course, this is delicious. But why did we need to go through all that trouble and figure it out? And why don't, if this was kind of like right around when Smooch was coming out too, and it was like, oh, of course, like this is a much easier way of doing this. But what if we had an active that was sensory enhancing and more complementary to the substrate? And so I started like pulling at that thread. And at that time, I did not realize why nobody was using puree, and I didn't know much about emulsion charges and colloidal instability. But, you know, it was a problem that could be worked and figured out. The issue was, you know, finding a place to do that within a rec market without having the, you know, ability to do what Wink did and build a Wink wagon, for example. Like, or, you know, at the time I was doing work for Can in Mass, and we were doing production and just kind of, I was consulting wherever they needed me, which frankly was a lot of places, because they had carved out relationships in all these markets, and that's a insane way to go about stuff. Almost as insane as making an 18-wheeler with a full beverage production facility on the back of it and then buying another one. But like, I think that I don't know, I'm still in awe of that whole thing. But you know, so at the time it was like, okay, we're going to do these infused smoothies, and I beat my head against the wall for a couple of years and just had deals fall apart for various reasons. I was going to be taking over can space in Fitchburg, and then they changed the deal at like the 11th hour, and they're like, actually, this is going to be a grow room, and you can take this other decrepit building on our site that is not set up for anything, and do that. And I was like, well, it would have been great to know 11 months ago when we made a deal. Thanks, guys. And then, you know, just a couple other just things that fell apart for various reasons. And I'm glad it didn't work out, because you know, the potential for hemp was growing at that time within Can and beyond. That, you know, after watching what happened with the low ceiling for beverages and just understanding how this type of low dose drink is maybe not for that consumer who already has a tolerance, just spent $150 on carts and gummies, and doesn't want to spend $6-7 on a single can of a drink, you know. So during this time, I had started working on this, you know, kind of non-alc beer thing, knowing that it was a tiny regulatory needle we had to thread in order to stay outside of the TTB, but still needing to make something that tastes excellent, you know, up to standards, my standards, which, you know, as a professional brewer are high. I, you know, have had enough non-alc, you know, and I even taught at Sacred Heart's Brewing Science program when we were kicking off that program, helped develop the curriculum, and I taught the you know, sensory and raw materials class at Sacred Heart for a couple of years.
I almost went there during Siebel stuff, and then I ended up going, or Cicero and stuff, and then I ended up going to Siebel. Yeah.
Nice, man. You know, I did my brewing science at UCSD because
okay.
At the time, you know, in like 2012, there was like a 5-year wait for everyone else, and I was like, oh wait, there's one here in San Diego, and Mitch Steele and Yusuf Sherney, and you know, we've got like it was a great set of industry professionals to, you know, kind of take my understanding to the next level. And so doing that at Sacred Heart and being able to pass that along, and, you know, that is, teaching is the best way to really, I don't know, if you brush up on your own understanding, and then it gets pushed beyond that as you're explaining and working through something with a group of folks. And I love that. It was a ton of fun. But you know, and I had one student who came in, he didn't drink, but he'd bring me a different non-alc every single day, to the point where I just started keeping them in the fridge, because some of them were truly atrocious. And if it didn't feel like it was going to explode, I, you know, was like, okay, this can go in the fridge. And I was cleaning out my fridge one morning and came across Best Days Kolsch, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try this. Because curiosity is piqued, love a Kolsch, and then poured it out, and it tasted like a Kolsch, which I didn't think was possible. And so that got me like pulling the thread on, okay, well, maybe this is possible to do and make something that tastes great and that we can infuse with a low dose. And then it just fits into my life, you know, kind of how I want to continue to drink this beverage that I adore and have spent so much of my entire life kind of focused on, from that first homebrew batch of Sierra Nevada Pale at 17 to today. And just started working it, and it somehow we figured out how to get to the point where it's like, okay, this is not considered a malt beverage because of the operational, the way we're going about this. It is fermented, de-alked, and then on our end, when we receive this ingredient, because we can't do any alcohol, anything here, we dilute it and hop it, and so we're never meeting that minimum amount of hops during fermentation to be considered a malt beverage, and are doing that on the other side. That presents a ton of challenges. If you've ever dry hopped in a bright tank cold, you will understand what a pain that is. But it's that coupled with like these advanced flowable hop products, and we've made a now multiple award-winning CAN-NA-BREW for that.
That's awesome. So we're with the award winning, which types of competitions are you able to submit to? And then talk about that a little bit. I was not aware that there were competitions yet for that category, so that's cool.
It is. It's a tough one because we're going up against seltzers and sodas.
Oh, okay. You're in the whole non-alcohol. Okay, general category. Yeah.
Or so for like the high spirit awards, the LA ones, for example, they do have a subsection of beer, wine, cider. But out of all the entries, it's a very tiny fraction of which. And I want to be judged against beers.
Yeah.
That is where I want to go. So we're can't enter GABF or World Beer Cup yet. I think after talking with the US Beer Open guys, they'll allow us this year. So or next year. So we'll do that one.
I heard that Great American Beer Festival allowed RTDs this year from breweries that are members of the Brewers Association. So I wonder how the next couple of years will play out with that. Yes.
Yeah, I ping them every once in a while and try to move the conversation forward, and they're like, "But you're not a brewery," and I'm like, "We're a can of brewery." I think hopefully we'll catch up with that. And the other side of it is the uninfused versions. We could always enter those. And now that we actually have federal clarity and an allowance for cannabinoids in beverages, I'm not happy with that 0.4 limit. I still think like there is a bunch of consumers we haven't found yet that are, would be interested in a non-alc brew that has a little bit of a floaty feeling, but isn't gonna, even 3 milligrams is too much for some people. So it's like, okay, you can have a couple, feel a little bit floaty, kind of similar to the Hi-O model of like, oh, you got to drink 3 of these. And it's funny because they say you got to feel the float after 3. And Jared, our marketing sales, is always like, Hi-O, that's our word. But
that's funny.
Then that is an unrestricted SKU that is, 100% federally legal, and only a very small minority of states have total prohibition. So, we'd be able to get that into different channels. So that's, kind of in the light of this ban where our head is at, as, if nothing changes, we can at least do that and keep operations as they are in Connecticut with our 3 milligram ceiling.
I woke up today. I'm gonna tell you this for the first time publicly. I woke up today and I want to change the word ban, because it's not a ban.
It isn't.
If you actually look at it from a legal standpoint and a business agreements and contractual standpoint, what they did is an acknowledgement of need for regulation. So they actually legalized everything in the clearest way possible.
Yeah.
And because if it was a ban, and if they really cared about the children's safety that they claim is the big thing, it would have been immediate.
Yeah, right.
It would have been effective at midnight, like every other thing.
Yeah, I feel overall optimistic, and I think that is very important. That's how I am looking at it. It's like, now we have, it's not perfect, but it's allowed, and this could lead to getting these ingredients on the GRAS list, and everything that we need, and as an industry, we've been screaming from the rooftops of like, please regulate us, please tax us. Like,
Exactly.
the beverages, the barrier of entry is so high. It's, and, outside of some lower barrier of entry to say shots or something like that. If you are foolish enough to do a beverage company and go through all that trouble, it weeds out bad actors. I'm not saying there aren't any, but for the most part, beverage companies very much are acting in good faith. I don't know the internals of everybody, but like that's what we're doing, at least.
It's one of those things that it's people. I can tell everybody that's listening, the people that are on this show all are. That is while there is no prep, there is a precursor that I do a little bit of that research and I understand the industry. Because there are bad ones out there, and I've honestly had some in the very beginning in my portfolio that I had to fire. When I first started out in 2018, 2019, and then especially during COVID, it was really hard to vet clients in this industry. And it was, I wasn't even selling stuff out. I was just getting the discovery notes and all this stuff. And I'm getting COAs that were copied and pasted. And it was like really weird stuff. And I'll never talk about them publicly because I don't, and most of them I don't have to because they're gone. That's the other thing, is that they peter out real quick. And that's really what that other piece is. So yeah, there are bad actors and we all don't want them in there. And nobody wants non-child proof stuff. And I don't mean child proof on cans and everything like that. I mean on the gummies and the flour and all that. That all stuff needs to be taken care of and it needs to be regulated just like everything else. I mean, I grew up as a kid and we could access Rip Fuel when we were in high school, and it was an amphetamine that we were taking before football and wrestling. And it was like we could just go to the gas station and we could buy it. Some of my buddies got really sick off that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, thankfully nobody died, but this stuff happens. And here's the problem. What did they do? They banned Rip Fuel. They didn't ban the health supplement market, because God forbid if they did with creatine and all that stuff, where would we be today with a $600 billion industry that exists in supplements? That's the thing, is like, this is just natural. You don't go and cut an industry because there's a couple shitheads that are fucking things up. You know what I mean? Like, and speak freely if you ever want to again, and you're frustrated, and you can curse on this show. But there's a big weed leaf on our logo, so we don't hit the algorithm the same way as everybody else. So what I mean is like is the fact is, I'll be honest with you, and I've said this to the lawmakers in Pennsylvania the other week, to throw the baby out with the bathwater and eliminate an industry because you're too lazy to enforce segmented specific enforcement is the biggest embarrassment on our legislation and law enforcement in this. That's all there is to it.
100% agree.
If there was a guy producing bathtub gin, you would go get him. You wouldn't say, "Oh, no, gin's bad, and we're canceling gin for 2026." You know what I mean? You go arrest him and put him in jail.
Man, it is. I try not to focus on the double standard too much, because I'm losing enough hair up here as it is.
But here's the thing: is the double standard is actually, as uncomfortable as it is, it's the important part for us to move forward, because it's important. I'm actually working on some print media for our campaign that's literally it's gonna be a beverage like yours, and then a Pilsner. And that contradiction is what people need to see is, oh, here's a 5 milligram hemp THC beverage, and here's a Pilsner. Yeah. That's the same. Oh, here's a 10 milligram. This is a Trogs Perpetual. These are the same. Here's a glass of wine. And then here's a 10, a 15, a 20, and a 50. Here's a glass of bourbon. You know what I mean? And that's the contradiction that we actually, moving forward from a communication and education standpoint, need to enforce. Because right now, it's scary back alley weed and stuff my dad smoked in the back and all. It's not. And people need to realize, I just had Lix, Lix ingredients. Ever heard of them?
No.
So they create the water soluble emulsion THC that a lot of these companies use, and yourself and everything like that. I just interviewed him 2 weeks ago. Basically, the exact same concept is when you really distill it down to the water soluble solution that it is. How is it any different than the tanker truck of ethanol or the yeast? It's the same.
That's it.
It's literally you're taking one piece of the bakery recipe out and you're putting in another.
Yeah. And so in Connecticut, we are we don't have any allowance to use hot whip or work in progress. So our water soluble needs to be 0.3 or below, which is a giant headache. When it's, I mean, typically we'd be getting 20-25% potency on our water soluble THC. And the reality of how that works is now we're just shipping a ton more liquid or pre-diluting a thing that we would be diluting regardless. If it's okay to get a tote of ethanol and dilute it into something that, will be a margarita and, at 13% in a can, that's fine, but not okay for me. It is, it's a real headache.
It is a real headache, and it's also funny because it's pulling the veil back of the industry that people don't realize. And I'm going to just say it right now because people have seen photos on my stuff of it before. During COVID, it became very evident when we all lost all of our businesses, and in the distillery world, I happened to be in it at the time. I found all that distilleries making sanitizer stuff, and we ended up doing a whole network across. Yeah, so we ended up selling state contracts to Delaware, Montana, we did a big business with it within 30 days. But what I learned was I didn't know about the distillery world because I only been to craft distilleries. I didn't learn the majority of distilleries just grab 250-gallon totes, get them shipped in that are 200 proof, and then just distill them down and flavor them instead of actually creating anything from scratch. Now, did that shun my idea of the distilling industry? Yes. But did it make it very easy to make sanitizer? Yes.
Yeah.
So what people need to realize is we receive the same product that distilleries do that we created into sanitizer, but the distilleries dilute it down to a place that you can actually consume it. But at the source origin, it's the same medicinal ethanol that is used in rubbing alcohol or sanitizer and all that stuff. And you're consuming it.
And there are so many places to buy it from. It's like it's wild, and it is
none of this is a bad thing. I want to say, I know Gordon, you're with me. Like, none of this is a bad conversation. I have to say this for everybody that jumps in and out of these things, for the audience to understand. We're building parallels to make you understand that nothing was wrong with it prior because you didn't care and you didn't know.
Right.
And just because you found out how the sausage is made doesn't mean sausage doesn't taste good anymore. You still eat sausage. You still eat hot dogs. Like, come on.
I love a hot dog, man.
Well, hey, I'll wrap up. I see you got a couple more minutes here. I want to get in a little bit to some leadership type things. Okay, I want to get back into how old are you and Jared, and take me to the moment. Pretend I'm a time traveler and I'm sitting next to you and Jared when the light bulb comes and this idea comes out. We talked about you guys crossing paths and stuff like that on the street and doing market work. When was that moment, and where were you, and what was the context of everything? And
so I'm 38. Yeah, 38 right now.
Nice.
And which is wild to me. But after beating my head against the wall in the rec market in Massachusetts for years, I came to some important realizations. One, I can't do this alone. It is beyond the scope of my capacity. And, I was like, okay, now I got to find people to come and join me on this. And the first guy there was, he's a friend of mine from UVM, Joe Duplinski. It just kind of worked out that his job at Yale was kind of coming to an end. We've always talked about entrepreneurial things, and he is a very savvy, finance, business administration, all the stuff that I am not good at. I could figure out how to do it. It probably won't be pretty, and it's going to take me too much time. So Joe was the first. And Jared was funny because he just kind of pinged me on LinkedIn because he had left Two Roads. He was working for ABV, doing a lot of 6 Point stuff, living in Brooklyn, and kind of like pulling this thread of infused beverage company on his own, specifically like wanting to do a 1 milligram non-alc beer. somebody, I'm not sure who said it. They were like, you should reach out to Gordon. You know, Gordon, he's working on this. And he pinged me on LinkedIn, and we caught back up and talked for a little bit. And I sent him what I was working on. And that was when he was like, oh shit, this is really good. Like, I didn't know this was possible. You know, and it was just the kind of precursor to what is now our light. It was more of a Mexican lager, and, you know, frankly, you know, doing an adjunct lager in this process ended up with something so thin and lacking body. You know, the adjuncts just dried it the heck out. It tasted like kind of like a beer seltzer barley pop sort of thing. But like the flavor was there, it just needed to be coaxed out better, which we subsequently did over like the next year. But he tried that and was like, oh man, how do we, let's figure this out. And, you know, we spent, so brought Jared on, and then our other co-founder, John Lafreniere, is somebody that I had been working on a separate project. Brought him in as a consultant because I had a crazy idea of pre-infusing a drinking cup. And, you know,
It's not a crazy idea. That is a stroke of genius.
Yeah. And I had cobbled together like an MVP that worked. It just not compliant with the Farm Bill, and not a thing that well, there were a lot of issues with it. You know, for what is a straightforward idea, you know, trying to solve for on-premise, whether you're a music venue or a festival. Yeah. It's like, hey, this is the easiest way to do it. You don't need to take a dropper out. You don't need to pour powder into it. You don't need to mix it up. You just pour whatever into a cup like this, and you're done.
That's wild. So outside of the law part, from a functionality science standpoint, did you get it to work?
Yeah, we've got it to work. And
she was amazing.
We're like 3,000 formulas into this thing, and, you know, so he is a chemist, biologist, and we're just getting some actual printed cups.
Wow.
To try to coax, I don't know, a music venue into letting us trial this thing. It's, you know, it's like win-win-win. You know, we make a great margin, the venue makes a better like an insane margin, and then the consumer can have whatever non-alc beverage they are selling there. Yeah. With 5 milligrams.
I can't wait till that gets cleared. I'm serious. Like, that is absolutely genius. Like, I thought like the powdered stuff was genius, but that, you just took it to a whole nother level.
It's yeah, this is me trying to have my cake and eat it too. You know, the brews beverage, like, that's my wheelhouse. I understand how that works. And when the product got to where it is now, as far as flavor, and we built this brand around it, you know, I didn't want to give that up, although I was told to just cut everything else out and go after this. But this is still kind of a nebulous thing. And we, you know, despite my best efforts, closing on fundraising is very difficult and not getting easier as time goes on.
Yeah.
And
that's a nice revenue stream addition there. Dude, it's like, think about the guy that created the wine bag boxes. You know what I mean? Like that. I mean, I know nobody created it because it was ancestrally what it was and all that other stuff, but he brought it back. All right. And then you make it, you know.
Was it an Australian company that like really was like, oh yeah, we'll just put it in the bag? Which, you know, props, but also there's a couple of Tour de Franzia nights from college that I still regret.
Tour de Franzia, I forget. It's amazing because I'm 40, you're 38. Yeah, slap the sack was definitely a common courtesy. Tell you one funny as we're closing out though is I played rugby at Drexel University, so you can imagine I got a lot of stories from that. And we actually used to play up at Connecticut and stuff like that too. One of my old teammates says he's a professor at University of Connecticut right now. Yeah, he teaches nanotechnology and stuff up there. But we used to have in our house, and I'm going to make fun of him because he was in the house. In every archway of our house, we had a wine sack nailed to the archway, so you couldn't walk through from room to room without slapping and then chugging.
The cursed mistletoe Oh my God.
No, it's we had a joke that we were a drinking team with a rugby problem. That was
There it is.
what our joke was. Yeah.
There it is.
But no, it makes sense. So I want to take a moment to appreciate you and what you guys are doing, because it makes sense when you talked about the ADHD and all that stuff too, because it's not just something to have something. You know what I mean? It's not just, you already created. I really do look at the fact that, like, I know you're not the only, there may be, how many other people are doing brew? I think there's only one, right? If anybody, I think at this point.
You know, big props to Easy Man and Go Brewing.
Yeah.
They're doing a superlative, you know, iteration of this, and we need more folks to make high quality stuff. You know, building a category, a niche of a niche into something that, you know, we still get people that look at this and assume it's a seltzer. You know, it's his IPA right there, which for us it means infused and pretty awesome. But you know, it's like, we tried to make it look as much as we could without stepping on terms of art, etc. And then when you pour it and taste it, you're like, oh, of course. But in a sea of seltzers and sodas and teas, it's hard to stand out. And we're, you know, kind of this orphaned thing where we don't really fit with the non-alc beer, and we don't really fit with the rest of the infused stuff, and we need to carve out our own space, which, you know, there's a couple others. Again, this regulatory needle is really tiny, and either you are completely avoiding it and using flavorings and colorings and, you know, making an approximation, or you have figured out how to do it and have it not be a malt beverage, which is tough. It's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. What where how many states are you guys in on the shelf currently? Are you
So we're our distribution footprint is Connecticut, Rhode Island, and we've just started in New Jersey. And you know, we have some high spot stuff, Foxtrot in Chicago area, all their stores carry Float House, which I think is really cool. Would love to be out there so we can build the category with Easy Man. Because I also hear they're coming to Connecticut. And
knock on each other's backyards.
Yeah, and I think it's like you need a foil.
You do, and you need a portfolio of multiple brands. So I appreciate what you said, is that there needs to be more. You're right.
There does. You know, ours is going to be the best. And you know, this is the fun part of the whole thing. You know, I even being like laughably underfunded and not being able to support the markets that we want to as much as we are, you know, we spend a lot of our collective effort on co-packing for other brands, because that keeps the lights on right now. We don't have other options. But getting to that point, and you know, we know the playbook. We know what we need to do. We need to, you know, but it's a slow burn with the resources we have. So it's doing as many tastings, getting out there whenever we can, which is not easy with all the co-packing and production and 3 small kids. I would love a little bit more flexibility, but that's also not something I'm going to be, you know, compromising, because they're only little now, you know.
I'll close out. I'm glad you just said that. And I'll close out with this I spent the beginning part of my career in my 20s when my kids were young, and my kids are 15 and 14 now. But when they were young, I was traveling the country, recruiting breweries, bringing them to Pennsylvania. What you just said there at the end is the most important thing. If you have really young kids, and if you have kids, period, nothing matches the time away that you spend. And I will always say this, and my kids watch the show, and I'll say this to them and noddingly, and they know this. It is the biggest regret of my life to have missed those beginning years. In reflection now, I'm doing everything to make up for it. But everybody, and I need to stress it because I interview founders all day long. And that's why. Because we are workaholics. We are most likely always ADHD and autistic, and we go down the tunnel and we will run through brick walls with our head first.
Yep.
And we will succeed. But we don't always pause every once in a while. And I appreciate that is in your intentions and it is part of your goals, because I'm trying to let everybody know that, like, from somebody on the other side that had kids young and ran through the career early, you don't get it back. But you can make up for it, but you don't get it back. So Keep doing what you're doing. I will close this out today in a more positive note, is that if you're not following Gordon Floats on TikTok and everything like that, please follow his personal page. In addition to that, Gordon is extremely helpful in letting people know about legislation, being transparent about the product, and all the products we just talked about. He does a lot of little behind the scenes stuff. So you can go inside the lab, go inside the brewery, and check out what he's making while he's doing it. So, Gordon, I want to thank you for having the courage and the cojones to come on and with no questions, no prep. You had no idea what I was going to ask you. And I just really appreciate it. It takes a special kind of person. A lot of times, like I said, I interview founders, and that makes sense. But you'd be surprised. There's a lot of founders that don't want to do this. So thank you for taking the time. I really do.
Nate, thank you. Really appreciate this. Appreciate all the work you're doing. You know, this community pushing this category forward is I am impressed by it every day. So appreciate you.
I'm impressed and inspired by everybody's stories and what everybody's working towards. We're just feeding off each other's energy. But yeah, it's there to go. I'll close out with this. Everybody, please remember, it is free to smile at somebody. You look at somebody, open the door for somebody. Stop being a piece of shit out there and start making people smile and laugh. See that? I just got Gordon laughing. See, sometimes you got to be a little weird to get a giggle out of everybody. The world is a scary place, but say hi to your neighbor. All right. Everybody have a great day. Gordon, thank you so much. I was thinking about Jared and Gordon at the same time. I almost Brangelina you guys there for a second. Hey, you guys take care. Have a good day, man.
You too. Awesome, man.